It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host.
Now, there are countless issues facing the global world. I mean, a myriad of problems facing the global world today. We have a lot of policies being set in here and there, yet the problems of the world seems not to be abating. Now, which way to go and what are the things that we are doing wrong? These are some of the important questions that lies in the heart of my audience. Now, on the Backstory with Omobola Stephen, our focus is to shine more light on what has not worked, excuse me, and what will make it work. Now, we believe the world needs a shift. The world needs a disruption. Now, the mission of the Backstory with Omobola Stephen is to pivot this discussion. And on the Backstory with Omobola Stephen, we like to shine more light indeed on what has not worked. My name is Omobola Stephen, and I'm the host of the Backstory with Omobola Stephen. We focus on government and politics topics with other subtopics like the science and technology, society and culture, and the environment. I would like you to join me in the conversation with you today, and let's be the change that the world needs indeed. Today, I have Matthieu Mehuys, who is a passionate landscape architect on the show. His mission is to make our world a greener and healthier place. Welcome to the show, Matthieu Mehuys.
Hey, Omobola, thank you very much for having you on your amazing show. And what a great introduction. I think you already nailed a very important topic that the world is in desperate need for change, but somehow things are not going as planned.
Thank you once again, Mehuys. We are looking forward to a great time. I mean, my audience, and can't wait to learn of what you have to share with them regarding your expertise as a landscape architect. So my first question is really, how can we restore the health of our planet? What actions do you think that we need to start taking now?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And just for your audience to understand where I'm coming from. So basically, I grew up on a family farm. And when I was about 5 years old, I got extremely fascinated about how it is possible that if you put a seed in the soil, that it grows into a magnificent plant. And from that early age, that fascination guided me throughout my life to actually dedicate my life on making our planet a better, healthier, and more beautiful environment. So now to answer your question, I think it is all linked to the fact that the natural world, or how nature actually works, is been governed by a system that has been in place for millions and millions of years. So nature works in a specific way that if we can tap into that system that nature has already created and we are actually part of it, then we as a gardener or as a farmer or as anybody who is, for example, also in real estate, can be way more successful, because when you work with nature, things will be working for you rather than against you. And this is, I think, the key aspect that needs to be considered. And that's also deeply discussed in my book, 12 Universal Laws of Nature, how to get the most potential out of your land. And just to give you an example, one of these things is that, for example, in my book, it's called the law of vibration. And this is a common universal law. But in the plant world, how it works is that plants that are healthy vibrate on a way higher frequency, and plants that are actually unhealthy have a way lower frequency. And as it turns out, insects can detect that. So what happens if that in your garden or on a farm, if you use a lot of chemicals and pesticides and you're basically working against nature, then you will be growing unhealthy plants. And insects are attracted to unhealthy plants because also the way nature works is that insects are here to actually decompose plants that are unhealthy. So that's basically nature's way of recycling nutrients, recycling energy. So this is a key aspect to understand, that if you want to do it more healthier, more successful, you have to grow healthy plants. Because if you can grow healthy plants, you can make them more resistant to insects and to other things. And on top of that, when you have healthy plants, you have healthy products. Like if you want to grow an apple, if you have a healthy apple tree, that apple will actually be super healthy. It will be full of nutrients, vitamins, all the things that we need as humans, so that our personal life will also improve and you'll actually become a lot more healthier. And that's also what I tell all of my clients. Like, if you start to garden and you start to work in your own garden, you'll live way longer. You'll save so much money on your healthcare bill, because the chances of you getting cancer or other diseases reduces drastically. So there's so many benefits of starting out as a gardener. So yeah, I think that's the main topics around that, around your question.
All right, now, Matthieu, you've worked on some of the most amazing gardens and eco projects in the world. So can gardening, can it really save the planet?
Yes, so that's another great question. I think we need to work on all fronts of the natural world. So first of all, we still have natural environments on our planet, like national parks, and they need to be continued to be protected. And on top of that, I think we can or should take out some of the agricultural lands and also give that back to a natural world, or give it back by reforestation. But then on top of that, the all of the agricultural land, which is like substantial, it's actually the biggest land surface of our planet, is for agriculture, and we do need that to feed the whole world. So the practices that we are doing on the farmland need to change into a regenerative farming system, which is similar to what I do with the gardeners. I also help farmers to do that. And then on top of that, I'm a strong believer as well that each and every individual can have an effect on our global planet. And I don't know if you're familiar with the butterfly effect, but the butterfly effect says that if you a butterfly with one swing of its wing, in a chain reaction, it can start a hurricane. So I do think that if you only have a small backyard, for example, and you make it into a beautiful biodiverse garden that is good for nature, that is good for you as well, then that will have a ripple effect on your local environment. On top of that, your neighbors will start to look at you like, oh, wow, you're doing something different. It looks amazing. So it will excite them to also start. And then there's also quite a lot of science around the fact that we as humans are gardening. And I came across an amazing study that showed that the highest natural value areas of our world are either like the extreme pristine landscapes, like let's say the rainforest in the Amazon, or it's the areas that are surrounding the city. So the periphery of bigger cities is one of the most biodiverse areas on our planet. And that's because there are gardeners who are all doing like different things. Some people are growing food, some are growing flowers. Everybody's doing something different. And this is super good for the local wildlife and for the habitat. So I'm a strong believer that gardens can save the world, or at least that they are a big part of the puzzle that we need to put together.
All right. Now you mentioned regenerative gardening in your discussion. And I'd like you to emphasize more on that. Why is it important for us to begin to consider?
Sorry, can you ask your question again? I didn't fully understand it.
You mentioned a regenerative gardening earlier on in your discussion. So I'd like to ask, I'd like you to, for emphasis sake, I'd like you to share more light on that. Why is it important to begin to consider it for our garden?
Yes, so there's a lot of reasons to do it. Now, I'll talk about the reasons why it is important for your listeners to do it, because that's what people want. You want to have a benefit for it yourself. So the thing is that if you start to garden in a way that is called regenerative gardening, there's certain techniques that you need to learn. And I'm teaching that to people in my masterclass, which is called the Garden of Your Dreams Masterclass. And in that system, I explain you, for example, that one of the principles in nature is that if you look out into nature, you can tell me, can you see somewhere in nature that the soil is like bare, that there is soil that is completely open? Do you think you can see that? No, it doesn't. Like in nature, it's always, the soil is always covered. There's either plants or leaves or something. And as it turns out, the topsoil of our planet is like the skin of our own bodies. So it needs to be protected in some way or another. Now, what most gardeners do all of the time is they turn around the soil, they just like, and it's because we think that's the way gardening should be done. But what we don't know is that we're actually destroying the soil if you turn it around. Also, using chemicals is a big problem. But if you do it the other way around and you start planting as much different plants, also using mulch. So mulch is basically a way that you cover the soil with dead material like straw. And if you start to apply that in your garden, you will actually save a lot of time, because most gardeners are breaking their back trying to control all the weeds in their garden. But if you do it in that way, it's more in harmony with nature, and you will have to do a lot less weeding. Now, on top of that, you also create a garden where plants are growing way faster. So meaning that if your plants grow way faster, it also reduces the maintenance, because that's what you want in your garden, is for plants to grow, and then this makes you have to work less in your garden. So there's other benefits, like if you can grow your own food, the food that you will produce will be of a much higher quality, and that will actually improve your personal health. So that's actually why it's so important to start gardening in such way.
Right. So let's talk about reducing maintenance, as we just shared earlier in our garden.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask two-in-one questions. The first question is about, reducing maintenance in our garden. I would like you to share some helpful tips for my audience to help them buy. And also, do you think that we have more gardens in our world today as it used to be in the 90s?
So the second question is that if we have more gardens today than in the 90s, is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes. I'm asking, the importance of gardening can never be emphasized, but we don't really have discussion on gardening as we ought to. Now, the question I'm asking is really compared to the 90s, early 90s, do you think that we have more gardens than we used to now to date?
Yeah, again, that's a really good question, and I don't have any data around that. But what I do think is that it has definitely decreased a lot. But at the same time, I do see a whole new movement of people that have no experience in gardening or have never even touched a gardening tool, that say like, I really want to start learning it. I really want to know what it is about. I want to experience what it is to grow my own food. So I think there's a drastic increase of the interest. But far too often I see people doing things on their own, and they're kind of misled by what most of the garden centers are selling, or other people in the gardening industry that are more about profit generation, or they want to keep selling continuously, so they give the wrong advice to people, and that's linked to use of chemicals in the garden as well. So yeah, does that answer your question?
You can go ahead with the second question about reducing maintenance in our garden.
Yes, so that's a big one, right? Everybody who contacts me to start a new garden is like, I love to have a big new garden, but I don't want any maintenance. And then I tell them, if you don't want any maintenance, you should put in a plastic lawn, and you will have no maintenance. So the first thing that we have to do when you are gardening, you should change your mindset in a way that when you are a gardener, you will always have to do maintenance. Because also in nature, there's always an animal that will graze in the land, or that will cut down a tree, and they are actually doing the maintenance of the landscape. So first thing is that you have to overcome that, and I also believe that you have to start enjoying it. It's actually a privilege that you have a piece of land that you can work in, and it's way better than watching TV or doing other things. It actually, one person once told me that, he said, like, if you have any problems in your life, go out into your garden, work in your garden, and you'll find all of your answers. So that's something that I'm also a strong believer of. So that's the first way I want to answer it. Like, don't be scared for the maintenance. It's actually something to enjoy. But then on top of that, we also don't want to become slaves of our own garden. Like, you still want to go out with friends, you still want to enjoy life. You don't want to be in your garden all day long or all weekend in your free time. So we do have to find ways to optimize it. And one way of doing that is that you have to make a plan. You need to plan your garden ahead. You have to like make a concept. You have to think about what is your vision with your garden. You have to think about what plants you want to plant. And so it does require some planning ahead, because if you just go out and you just start buying some plants and you dig them in the ground, like this is something that I see especially now in springtime in this side of the world. People get excited that it's spring and they say like, I want to start gardening. So they go to a gardening center or a garden center, which is full of plants that have been indoors in a greenhouse all winter and that have been heated. So they're already growing way too fast and they're already like a little bit unhealthy, or oftentimes they give them already a lot of chemicals. And then in this garden center, they're already flowering. And when a plant is flowering, it's actually very vulnerable. So it's not the best time to plant a plant when it's full in flowers. But anyways, it sells good. So that's what people do. And then they come home and they just dig it in their ground, thinking like it's the right soil, it's the right sun condition. Like, there's so many things that they don't consider. So usually half of the plants die, or sometimes all of the plants that they plant die. And they have a lot of maintenance because it's not working. They're like, okay, I put all in these plants, but now it's overgrown by weeds. So, like I said, a first important part is to plan ahead and learn how to do it. And this is actually not that hard as you think. You just need to find the way that works. So, and then on a second thing, you have to learn how to apply principles that stimulate the improvement of the health of your soil. So things like adding in some high quality compost, mulching the soil to protect the soil after you did a planting, or if you're changing some things in your garden, like keeping the soil covered as much as possible. These are actually the most important things to do in your garden. Like, know what to plant where, also how to design it, and then put in as much things that will keep your soil covered. But then again, when it comes to the mulching and ground cover, I see a lot of people making a lot of mistakes. For example, you also have wood chips, right? So it's like the wood that's put into small pieces, and people think, oh, I'm just going to put that everywhere in my garden and then no weeds will grow through it. But it only works for certain conditions, for certain plants. Some plants like it, other plants dislike it. So you also have to consider what type of mulch to put where. So yeah, that's, I think, the key thing to do.
Thank you, Matthieu, for sharing that story with my audience. Now, I'd like to ask you further about gardening and also farming. In some way, my audience would like for you to shed more light on what are important plants, or what are some of the plants that we need to plant in the garden. Sometimes we're confused about what to plant there. Sometimes we just decided I can grow a crop in my garden, and I can also plant. So can you differentiate that and put that in our proper perspective?
So yes, that's a good question. So how I look at it, it's actually that I don't necessarily see a strict difference between farms and gardens. Like, on a farm, you can also have gardens, and in a garden, you also can have a mini farm, so you can grow your own food. So it's not necessarily like you don't have to, or it's hard to tell it in general. It really depends on what people are inspired by. And this is also something that I teach in my program. Like, you have to start with a vision. Like, what do you like about a garden? Do you like the fact that you can grow your own food? Or do you like the fact that you will have a lot of flowers? Like, what inspires you about having a garden? What would actually get you out of bed early in the morning to start working in your garden? This is key, because I don't want people to start growing their own food if they don't care about growing it, if they actually love growing flowers, for example. And my mother is the best example. She loves working in the garden, but she doesn't like to grow the food. She loves flowers, and she has actually now started her own flower business. She's together with me. We're growing organic farm flowers that are produced completely ecologically, and we're selling it locally. And that's her decision. She was really excited about doing that. So I invite people to also do that as a first step. And then on top of that, when you have your own garden and you say, okay, I do want to have a combination of flowers and some edible plants, one thing to consider is that when you want to grow vegetables in your garden, you're actually growing annual plants. These are plants that only live for 1 year. So automatically, the maintenance for this part of your garden increases a lot because you have to put in the seeds, you have to take care of the soil, there's a lot more work to be done when you want to grow your own vegetables. And it's totally doable. It's not like extremely a lot, but it's just more than, for example, a perennial flower garden. And the cool thing as well is that you can actually find a combination of both. So there are a lot of plants that live several years and that you can also eat from. For example, the artichoke is a perfect example, or rhubarb is a plant that comes back every year. And if you can actually incorporate edible plants in your perennial system, then you kind of have the best of both worlds, because it's less maintenance and you still can eat from them. Also, all kinds of berries are really cool to integrate. So it kind of really depends on each individual what you want to achieve with your project. And that goes the same for farms. I also teach that to farmers. Like if a farm looks amazing to do cattle, and I come on the farm and I would say like, oh, let's call the farmer Joe. Hey, Farmer Joe, your farm looks really perfect to do cattle. I think you should do cattle. But then if he's not inspired about doing cattle, he will never do the work that is necessary to do it. So it's not in my decision to make. I can help him to find what he really wants. But we have to find like, okay, I want to do oats, or I want to be the best potato farmer in America, or so that's really an important step before actually going ahead and starting.
Yeah, brilliant what you have there, Matthieu. So you would like to tell a bit more about your project or your program, the Farms of Garden, which will help farmers, which will support the farmers with, especially talking about farmers and climate change. So can you shed a bit more light on that to my audience?
Definitely. So the program is called the Farms of Eden Mentoring Program, and it's a 12-week program. So other than the gardening program, which is 9 weeks, I figured that for farmers, the perfect time to learn something and apply something is 12 weeks. And why is it 12 weeks? Well, if it would be 24 weeks, it would just be way too much information and they would never be able to apply it. And if it would be like only 5 weeks, for example, they will not be able to learn enough to apply it. So it's exactly 12 weeks. And that was a quite important step. And in that whole program, we take farmers on a journey to understand what I already said, like what do you want to produce for your community and what inspires you. And then throughout the whole program, we also focus a lot about improving the health of the soil. We talk about new systems to put in place that will actually save them a lot of time, and also ways to market their products on a way better way so that they can actually make a lot more money, because this is often the biggest problem with farmers, that they have a cash flow problem. So we resolve that. And then we also spent a half day, like one-on-one, and we develop a 5-year step plan. So this is a 5-year strategic plan that we develop with them, so that after the program is finished, they still know for the next 5 years what to do and how to do it. So that's really important. And yeah, it's really about doing something that is good for themselves as a farmer. But then if you do something that is good for your own and for your farm and for your wallet, it eventually turns out to be good for our planet and good for the local community, because the quality of the food is so much better. And yeah, that's in a nutshell what the program is about. Is there anything else, anything specific that you would like to know more about?
Yeah, you've shared, I think you've shed pretty more light on that. Just like you to tell me about your very interesting and truly inspiring book that you like to share with my audience. Can you do that, please?
Yes, sure. So the book 12 Universal Laws of Nature, How to Get the Most Potential Out of Your Land, is actually my life work so far of all the information that I've gathered, and I've synthesized it into 12 universal laws, because I think they don't only apply to your property or to your garden or to your farm. It's actually on a higher universal level. And the idea of the book really came from the fact that whatever happens in the let's say in the outdoor space, but even in your, if you have indoor plants, it is all governed by a certain way that nature works. And I talked about that earlier. And these 12, if you start to understand how these 12 universal laws of nature work, you then know how to be way more efficient and way more successful in your garden, in your farm. So I start with my personal journey and my personal story, and I explain all of the laws, and then I go into a lot of the best practices. I talk in quite detail about water, why water is such an important aspect. I talk about the health of the soil, that yeah, our soil is actually the most magnificent organism in our planet that is actually sustaining the life on Earth together with water. It's those two aspects that we need to be able to live on this planet. So we need to cherish that, and we need to improve that. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to stay on this planet, or to survive on this planet. And it's so fascinating. I'll tell you this, Amobola, that in our soil, if you take 1 teaspoon of healthy soil, that healthy soil can contain more microorganisms than there are people on the whole planet. So can you imagine that? Just this tiny amount of earth is full of microorganisms. And what microorganisms are, that is actually the same as in our own bodies. In our own body, we have our gut. And in our gut, what the microorganisms do is they can help us with the digestion. They're key for our digestive system to work. Because if you don't have healthy microorganisms in your gut, you can eat the healthiest food in the world. Your body won't be able to take it up into your blood and into your muscles and everything. So microorganisms are essential for you as a human being, because they kind of change on a like microscopical level. They change the molecules and the way the nutrients function, so that we can use them optimally. And as it turns out, what happens in our soil, it's exactly the same. The roots from the plants are basically like our stomach, but inverted. So the way I explain it is really like, if you look at our stomach, if you would turn that inside out, that's how roots actually work. And that's why, or that's a big part of the book that I really talk in great detail about, that if we can fix the health of our soil, then we can basically fix all of the problems on our planet.
Thank you once again, Matthieu, Mehuys. It's been a great time having this show with you. Now, you've shared exciting news to my audience about the poach that you have. You have any other important information you think is beneficial to them? Otherwise, you can share your parting word and also your social media handles and your website for the farmers or those prospective gardeners to get in touch and to learn more about you.
Yeah, definitely. So if people are excited about starting their own journey of gardening, I can highly recommend them to have a look on my website, which is www.gardenofyourdreams.com. And on that website, they can get free bonus videos where I actually show them some knowledge that is completely for free and that will excite them to start their own journey. And if people are interested to learn more about my book or to start reading my book, they can go to 12universallawsofnature.com. And then you can also find me in all of the social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. So all of these 10 channels. If people have questions, reach out to me, and we'll see how I can help you.
Brilliant. Thank you once again, Matthieu. We really had a great time indeed. Listen to your expertise, especially on landscape architecture, talking about how we can make our world a greener and healthier place, which is the mission that you have in hand. And so I and my audience, I wish you best of luck in this project and in subsequent ones that you embark upon. Now, if you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of the Backstory with Omobola Stephen, you can do so on any cross promotion platforms or any podcast distribution platforms you bump into. You can just type the Backstory with Omobola Stephen and do have a great time. Listen to incredible insight, disruptive yet constructive mindship conversation on topics and subjects on the government and politics, and subtopics like the science and technology, society and culture, the environment, and also the economy. I need you to stay safe always. I'm Omobola Stephen. I talk to you soon. Right now. Thank you so much, Matthieu.
Wow, Omobola, what a great job you did. I love the questions you asked. They're really good. And yeah, so thank you for that.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.